was a camp not far from here, just across the lake. It was called Camp Blackfoot. No one goes there anymore. Everything burnt down. There's nothing left except the ruins. Now, this camp had a caretaker, a really evil bastard, and his name was Cropsey. Everyone hated Cropsey. For a start, he was a drunk. 2 bottles of whiskey a day, no problem. Like, most of the time, he's somewhere out in space. But if he caught you, look out. Because Cropsey could strip the paint off the walls just by breathing on them. Now, this Cropsey was a sadist. I mean, he got real pleasure out of hurting people, scaring them. And he had these garden shears, you know? The kind with long, thin blades. He carried them all the time, wherever he went. And he had this kind of demonic way of looking at you. One time, this Cropsey really went after this kid from Brooklyn. Followed him around night and day. He made this kid's life living hell. But this time he chose the wrong guy. Because the kid and some of his buddies had planned a little prank that would scare the living shit out of Cropsey. Only problem was, the gag went wrong. The next thing anyone knows, Cropsey's trapped alive and burning in his bunk. They try to get him out, but the fire's so fierce they can't reach him. All they can do is stand outside and listen to him cry out in agony. They say he smashed his way through the bunk room door, just a mass of flames. And as he screamed out, burned alive, he cried out, "I will return! I will have my revenge!" They never found his body. He survived. He lives on whatever he can catch. Eats them raw, alive. No longer human. Right now, he's out there, watching, waiting. Don't look. He'll see you. Don't move. He'll hear you. Don't breathe. You're dead!
Greetings, fellow insomniacs, and welcome to another episode of Creature Features Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I'm your host, I'm your friend and frightened guide in all things creature featuredom. My name is Chunky Larry, and we are continuing the theme of Summer Camp Nightmare with an absolute classic. This is one of the go-tos when you talk about horror films set in summer camp settings or out in the woods during the summer, because there's some that are summer camp adjacent that still kind of qualify, but this is full on summer camp. Like, you get all of the summer camp in this bitch. So we're well into this campity camp. I'm going to say camp one more time, camp. But in order to join me on a discussion on a film that is full of talkable subjects, just things that I just can't wait to discuss, specifically producers. I am joined in this conversation by one of my good friends. He is co-host of the new podcast available wherever you're watching this or listening to this, Horrifying Tales of Horror, Dylan and Chunky's Horrifying Tales of Horror. I'm Chunky, so that would only mean, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dylan Jarvis. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good.
That's
Ready to
great.
dive into this
Dive into
summer
the
camp
woods.
classic. Yeah, dive into the woods.
And so there's obviously so much about this movie that's just like, this does not age. And specifically in hindsight, with everything that we know about Harvey Weinstein,
Oh, we're diving right in.
there's no, we're not going to dive right in, but I'm just like really trying to lay this out because I think that this is one of those really kind of complex horror films, and in the sense that it is on its surface kind of, by the numbers, but there's some weird elements. And watching this in preparation for this discussion, did you feel any different knowing now what you do watching this movie?
So we covered this on my old show Horror Haven a while back, like years and years and years ago, and I don't know if it was before all of the Harvey Weinstein stuff came out, or if I just wasn't like fully aware of the whole situation at the time. So as I was watching the movie, I would kind of was like looking into facts about it, and I saw that this was kind of the movie that kickstarted his career.
Yeah.
And it made me look back on stuff that had already happened in the movie, and I'm like, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
It kind of have you ever seen the movie Clown House?
No, I refused.
Okay, yeah. We covered that on Horror Haven. Wish I didn't, but that was made by Victor Salva.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the same thing. So for anyone listening or watching who might not know, he's the one who made Jeepers Creepers. He was actually convicted of one of the boys on set of that movie, of Clown House. And watching that, there was a lot of stuff that you're like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like there's a part where the character like wets the bed or something, and it shows him like stripped down completely naked to get changed on camera, and you're like, it was like, given the context of what happened, this is really fucking weird, and like makes it more uncomfortable to watch. So I know that when I watched it the first time and watching it before I looked into it, like watching it this time, I didn't really think too much about it. Like it's just like, oh, like quirky weird stuff, like, oh, this guy's watching people in the shower, but afterwards it's like, yeah, okay, it hasn't aged well.
Just weird context that makes it feel just so bizarre. But before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of The Burning from 1981, we're going to go to IMDb and we're going to read a synopsis of 1981's The Burning. A caretaker at a summer camp is burned when a prank goes tragically wrong. After several years of intensive treatment in a hospital, he is released back into society, albeit missing some social skills. What follows is a bloody killing spree with the caretaker making his way back to his old stomping ground to confront the youths that accidentally burned him. And that was by Action Dan, and he actually adds Action Dan at talk21.com. So if you guys want to say, hey, way to go, Action Dan, you did a fucking great job.
That was actually one of the better ones.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get on the run of really good synopsises from IMDb. But nonetheless, we are still going to play the game, which is, of course, called Synopsis Obscura. And Big D, you being somebody who has already done the show, you now know what is expected of you. And I would like for you to, without giving anything away, sell us on 1981's The Burning.
Non-lubricated rubbers.
Son of a bitch. Oh man, that might be my favorite. That might be my favorite so far of all of the synopsis obscures I've done. So way to fucking go, man. Uh, but yeah, this is honestly, if it weren't for the guy being lit on fire, and then that same said guy like accosting a man who's mocking him for being burned inside of a hospital, and then that same man murdering a prostitute, very Argento-esque with her going
Yeah.
through the window and shit. Uh,
So that whole section, even like the like him going with the prostitute, and it shows like the like rainy, gritty '80s New York stuff. Like
yeah,
that whole section felt like a Jalo film to me. Like
yeah, for
yeah,
no fucking reason though.
yeah, and then it just drops it completely, and we're like, okay, we're in an '80s slasher movie now.
Yeah, and like that shit literally has no fucking bearing on the entire fucking movie, dude. Like, why are we here? Why are we doing this? You were a-okay with the hospital thing, and kind of explaining, oh, he's getting out of the hospital, and you don't need to then have him murder somebody. You then build the tension, you build the suspense, but instead we get fucking meatballs for like, I want to say 40 fucking minutes.
Yeah, I think it would have been cool if they built it up to where, because the whole plot of the movie kind of builds on Cropsey's this urban legend,
Yeah,
and he's a campfire story. So I think it would have been cool if they did it to where the whole movie you're like, is the legend real, or is it just like somebody killing people that's going to the summer camp?
I think that would have worked as well, but I feel like this is like the layout of this, and so here's my fucking like war of this is that I personally like in this film the way that they build characters. And the way that they build characters is by making them likable. So when something bad happens to them, you either care or you want to see it happen. And they do that with all of their characters because they have all of this expository time before the violence takes place. Now, they could have had all of that take place the way that it does. And if you subtract the slaughter of the prostitute, it flows much better.
Yeah.
Like, really think about it. If you go from the hospital shit to then a new camp, then it could be possibly Cropsey, or it could be somebody at the camp. I don't know, maybe the main counselor who was involved with it, that he is acting these things out, and it's not Cropsey at all. You can build that suspense and that tension and that illusion, but it's not done. And I think that that's to the detriment of the movie.
I don't want to veer too much off topic, but do you know the story of the actual Cropsey?
No, please tell me.
Okay, so I'm going off of memory from like 10 years ago, but there was this hospital in New York, and I learned about this when I lived in New York, that they got shut down because they were treating patients very poorly. And I think it's the same one that if you've seen American Horror Story season 2, they kind of like parallel on that a little bit. How the people went in with the video camera and were like showing the mistreatment of everybody, and it ended up shutting the hospital down. But after they shut the hospital down, they had a bunch of these like really severely ill patients that didn't have anywhere to go, so they just stayed in the hospital, and they kind of just stayed homeless in the hospital. Well, I think if I remember right, a bunch of kids started going missing in the area. And they had this urban legend that it was Cropsey. It was this guy that was at the mental hospital who was taking them, and kids would go to this mental hospital like years and years later and like explore it, like abandoned buildings, abandoned mental hospital. And that's the story that they passed down, was that Cropsey was kidnapping all these little kids and taking them wherever,
And,
so
So the idea of Cropsey in itself is creepy. It's an urban legend. It's a campfire tale, and they do a good job of making the campfire a big point of the story. That lore that that and they basically do the exact same thing in Friday the 13th Part 2, where they tell the story of Jason around the campfire, and it's a campfire tale, and it's interesting because Tom Savini passed on doing Friday the 13th Part 2 in favor of doing The Burning. And let's talk about the work of Savini in this movie, because I think it is one of his underappreciated works.
I agree. I think that it's great, and I think it's funny reading into it a lot of it too, because like, if you look into it, the Cropsey like full reveal at the end of the movie, he was given a short time to do that, and he hated how it looked. Like he was really mad about it, and I thought that it looked great. Like
it's super effective.
I thought it was great. I thought it looked really good. Main highlight of the movie and the part that everybody goes to is that the raft scene, like the huge slaughter on the raft, and it's like you're watching, you're like, holy shit, this is really good. Like,
and it also has, a lot of people that ended up doing things in the film. You get a young Fisher Stevens, you get a young Jason Alexander, you get, for the editor of this film, Jack Shoulder, who went on to direct Alone in the Dark and Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and The Hidden. So like,
I think is it Holly Hunter was in
Holly
it?
Hunter has a brief blink and you miss it kind of cameo in this.
Harvey Weinstein, no.
He went on to be a renowned sex offender.
But I think that this kind of kickstarted a lot, and a lot of it was just, I feel like a lot of it is stuff that just fell into place perfectly. Like the whole ending scene in the mines, that was just, they stumbled upon it when they were filming the movie, and they're like, oh, okay, this would be a cool place to do it, and they filmed the end of the movie there. The director of the movie, I think if I remember right, he didn't like the movements that people did as Cropsey. So a lot of the Cropsey parts, he played it himself, because he's like, I want it to look a certain way. This is how it's going to look. This is how I'm going to do it. And he did it. So I feel like it was a lot of like piecing things together so that they fit perfectly in the end.
And what's the bully's name in this one?
Glazer. Yeah.
Glazer, the premature ejaculator. No, baby, I promise it's going to feel great.
Kind of a little creepy too, because if I remember right, there's a lot of no, I don't want to get off. Weinstein. So,
you gotta check on that cough, man. It's summer. Those summer coughs are rough.
Yeah.
But I don't really feel that this movie gets the credit that it deserves for being kind of one of those tentpole, pardon the pun, 80s horror fucking classics. But then at the same time, watching it again, because it is kind of bookended with the campfire again.
Yeah.
And putting the lore that he's still out there. And this is one of those rare films that did not get a sequel. Another one is My Bloody Valentine, which got a remake, but it did not get a sequel. And they're anomalies, sort of, in the sense that if you really look at the entirety of what the horror genre was at that period of time, it's these things that are like tentpoles to become bigger things.
Yeah. And
I think that there was room for this to kind of grow.
I agree. And it's funny too that it came off of the hype of Friday the 13th, which if you watch the first Friday the 13th, you feel like that story is wrapped up by the end of it. Like it was actually Mrs. Voorhees the whole time. Jason's actually dead, whatever. She dies, the story's over. But they went on to make what 9-10 more sequels. This they set up perfectly 4 more movies
and then didn't follow
and
up.
didn't do it. Yeah. So I don't know if it was like a box office failure. I didn't look that far into it, but I am kind of curious to why this one fizzled out where so many other ones went on to get sequels. I mean, there was even a ton of like failures that got at least straight to video sequels. So
exactly. And with all of the time that has passed, this film is as old as fucking me. There's never been a sequel to The Burning. And as far as I know, there's never been a remake of The Burning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just weird to me because it's not like it's a bad movie. It's not like there isn't some kind of argument to be had for a remake of The Burning, but there's no talks about it. And it's just, I wonder why that is.
Well, I think now that's definitely going to be off the table given the whole Weinstein thing. Because I know that he's kind of locked up a lot of rights to his movies. That's why like Kevin Smith has had such an issue with getting the rights to Dogma back. And that's why you don't see a lot of stuff with Dogma getting like re-releases or anything like that, is because Weinstein just won't give up the rights for it. So I don't think it's anything that we will see, at least anytime soon, but
somebody could tell the story of Cropsey in an interesting way, and it doesn't have to be called The Burning per se, but you can tell that story, and especially with everything else being kind of picked up, and to me, there's more there that should be explored, because coming out of this, I just kind of felt underwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I like this movie has 3 scenes.
Yeah. I remember this was only my second time watching it, and I remember watching it for Horror Haven, and I loved it. And even since then, I've said to people, like, this is one of my favorite slashers. You got to check out The Burning. I love The Burning. And then watching it this time, I kind of just zoned out through a lot of it. Like, I felt really bored. I think a lot of it goes to pacing, like you said. Like, we get a whole 40 minutes of really nothing happening. So,
and it doesn't really build on tension. Like, if I'm being terribly honest, while it's an excellently cut sequence, it just comes out of nowhere. And that's kind of, the essence of that moment, is that it is so sudden, it is so shocking, but kind of tonally from the entire film's perspective, it doesn't, because you get a kill, before that with the girl who runs away. But it just, I just feel like it just tonally shifts the film, but it doesn't really follow that same kind of malice, because then it gets kind of lulled again.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's direction or if that's editing or what that is, but there's just something when I look at this now, and especially I watched it like 3 or 4 fucking times in preparation for the conversation, and each time it's like, the raft scene is fucking excellent. When Glazer gets fucking carried to the tree and gets stuck up on it, that's fucking dope. The finale is awesome.
Yeah.
With the reveal and all of that, and the burn effect and everything, all of that shit works, but it's so few and far between. I just don't know how I feel about it. And I especially don't know how I feel about the lingering looks on these underage people. It just, there's a lot about this that, doesn't work to me.
Yeah. I've also wondered too, like, because when I think about this movie, I think about those scenes. I think about the raft scene. I think about Glazer getting killed. I think about the finale. I think about the whole like Giallo-esque opening scenario, and that's really it. And I almost wonder if that stuff would be less effective and less rememberable if the whole movie was just kill after kill after kill, because it's not so sudden and out of nowhere. If you're just getting people dying left and right, and then the raft scene happens, you're like, oh, okay, that's cool, but like, there's 10 other kills before this.
But so like, here's my thing is like, I feel like they do a good job of making you like the characters. So when the characters get killed off, it means something, like or dislike. And so that's why the Glazer death is kind of gratifying. Yeah. But they could have played up the idea that the kid who was peeping on the girl in the shower is really the one who is the killer. They could have played up on the fact that the counselor who had something to do with Cropsey's death was the killer. They could have played on these things. They could have been laying those seeds and giving you something, but they didn't really give you any of that. And so then it's like a barrage of violence that feels kind of sudden, and then a climax that also feels kind of sudden. Everything feels really kind of abrupt. And I just feel like if they'd paced it out and added some elements that would have been more character driven, it would have worked better. But let's get into Reapers. Where do you come in with the Reaper on this one?
If you asked me before rewatching it, it would have been a lot higher. I'm gonna come in with about a 6.
It's out of 5.
Oh, it's out of 5. Yeah, I'm thinking out of 10. 3. Yeah, I'm gonna come in with a 3. It's not the worst slasher. It does have its high points. I think that a lot of that comes from the talented people that were involved, like Tom Savini and all the actors and everybody. Like, everybody did a great job in what they were doing. I think that it's just like the pacing pulls it down, and really just the kind of bad taste that you get after the fact. It's the same thing, like I said, with Victor Salva. Like, I love Jeepers Creepers, but then I don't want to support that, and after everything that happened. So I think that 3 is pretty fair for where I'm at.
I'm coming in a bit lower than you. I'm going to come in with a 2 out of 5. This has genuine moments, right? But it feels disjointed. It feels like 3 different movies. Like the first act feels like it could be, kind of trying to be a De Palma film. And the second act feels straight up like a Meatballs movie, which I really enjoy. And then the third act feels like Friday the 13th from Wish. and it never really, it's got tremendous special makeup effects by Tom Savini. The editing of the raft scene is top notch. So that's like a perfect storm of filmmaking right there in that integral moment. And it's effective every time you see it, and it just works. From the movement of the boat up to that fucking canoe, from him rising out and that silhouette with the fucking shears, like all of that shit is fucking beautiful. Like, it's cinematically, it's one of those fucking scenes that will always kind of live on within the horror genre. I don't feel that way with pretty much any of the rest of the film.
Yeah.
and again, like, I really liked that scene with the prostitute, but I don't feel like it totally fits with any of the rest of the movie, and it should not exist. I would even go so far as to say at the scene where it's like the scare scene where he's like, "Hey man, we gotta look at this burnt up dude. You trying to get the fucking medicine, dog? You got to look at this burnt up dude, man. Oh man, get down here and look at this burnt up dude. Oh my god, this burnt up dude grabbed my arm. Look at the burnt up dude grabbing my arm. Did not expect that. Like it's just, I fucking hate that scene." And again, I feel like you don't have any of that. You just you hear that he went into, like, you get the burning sequence in the beginning of the movie, and then it goes into the scenes where it's the kids. It's in a different fucking, or it's just years later. You know, you get the camp, and it's years fucking later, and people are getting fucking picked off, and you know, there's the campfire tale of Cropsey. So some people think that it's Cropsey being, you know, the guy who burned up years before at the camp. And some people think that it's this fucking weird kid who's kind of like a shut-in. And then you have the red herring of, you know, you find out that one of the guys was one of the campers who burned up Cropsey, and he could be fucked up mentally. And then you have these three ways that you can go with it. It's a much more compelling fucking story, and it's not as much leering, because I feel like the part where it's meatballs just feels like it's unnecessarily leering, and it doesn't fucking work to me. And maybe if I were in the audience in the 80s, it would work for me. You know, maybe I would be right there along with everybody else leering, but I'm not leering. I'm trying to watch a fucking horror movie, dog.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but we're going to start getting out of here, you guys. We are going to keep this summer camp nightmare train a-rolling, because we're going to come back. And when we do, we're going to be talking about one of the all-time great summer camp horror films. I'm talking, of course, about Sleepaway Camp. This is one of those fucking movies that you need to see before you watch somebody talk about it. So this movie is available fucking everywhere. I think it's on Shudder. I think it's on Tubi. Pretty sure you can find it on YouTube. Like, go out of your way and watch Sleepaway Camp, because next week we're gonna have a fucking conversation, my man. I've got feelings. This is one of the ones that I've never fucking covered, and I've wanted to talk about Sleepaway Camp for a very, very fucking long time. So it's gonna be a fucking blast. But Big D, tell people all about the new show, where to find you, where to follow you, all that good shit.
So the new show we're doing, it's called Horrifying Tales of Horror. It's pretty much like a clip variety show where every episode we have different contributors in the horror scene, whether it be writers, like really any kind of content creator, contribute things. It's very much a show for the horror community by the horror community. So we're still in the early stages. I think when this comes out, we'll have maybe 1 or 2 episodes out. But give us a follow on all our social medias and stuff, especially if you have stuff that you want to contribute, whether it be like short films, short stories, anything like that. You can get in contact with us, message us. And yeah, that's pretty much where you'll find me.
And I'm going to put all over the screen where you can find those handles, but I believe it's HTOH Pod.
Yep.
Yeah. So HTOH Pod, wherever you go to social medias, you'll be able to find us. And yeah, it's an interesting little adventure that we find ourselves on. And you would think, oh, Chunky Larry, you just started Creature Features. What are you doing? Well, ladies and germs, I'm getting fucking nutty. And me and my boy D, Big D, we're gonna be interacting with you guys, the horror community, and we want it to just feel like something that is inherently not just us but you. So
I mean, my favorite part of doing the whole podcasting thing is really just interacting with people like that also share the same interest, because where I'm at, there's not a lot of people that are into horror movies. So really through the podcast and social media and stuff is where I talk a lot about this stuff. I don't talk about it outside of any of this, but also getting to see all this like indie stuff and meeting people who have written books or made their own short films and stuff, and getting to experience that and chat with them about that and get insight on, you know, where they were at when they wrote it or made it or whatever. So the show is something that you and I had come up with a while back to a degree, but we were trying to take on everything ourselves, where we were like, we're gonna review a movie and also cover a true crime thing, and it was too ambitious, I feel. Yeah. And my thing is, I'm not an expert on all things horror. I enjoy a majority of things horror, but I feel more comfortable leaving the show up to people who know that aspect of it than pretend I'm an expert of something. And, you know,
exactly,
not to ramble too much, but
no, and that's ultimately, to me, also what I feel like it's supposed to be is, you know, getting different viewpoints, and that's exciting to me. But ways that you can find out more about this show, Creature Features, you can start by liking us on Facebook, facebook.com/creaturepod, by following us on Twitter and Instagram and X, which I believe is Twitter, and TikTok and YouTube, all at CreaturePod. That is the way that you can find the Creature Features podcast all over the world of social medias. I'm doing it all. I might even set up a Threads. Who fucking knows? Maybe I'll set up a Threads. I don't know. I've got a letterbox. Maybe I'll set up a Threads. Maybe I'll start stitching things with thread. And you know, I don't know about you, but my letterbox game, it's pretty fucking middle of the road. If I'm being terribly honest, pretty middle of the road. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing really wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not great or nothing, but it's not the worst. Like, I've been much worse at doing my letterbox. Recently, I've been putting all these, because I'm watching every fucking horror movie in 2024, and so like I'm reviewing every horror movie that releases in 2024, dude. So like I'm starting to lose my fucking mind here.
Yeah. I did want to ask you something about that before we run out of time here, but being that we're kind of getting towards halfway through 2024, are there any trends for this year of horror that you're seeing? Like,
so the trend I would see, if I'm being just terribly honest, is that people are much more interested in trauma than like slashers. Trauma seems to be the fucking word of the year, and that's to me, I think, the best way to put it. But we're gonna get out of here. So for my boy Big D, Dylan Jarvis, and for myself, again, my name is Chunky. This has been another episode of the Creature Features podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Listen, someone you trust.